Daniel March watched his wife walk onto a train platform. 5 minutes later, she was dead, and the only man who saw what happened can't stand up without help from a bottle. The train hissed, a metal beast eager to devour the distance. Daniel March held Sarah's hand, her gloved fingers warm even in the chill of the morning air. "Just a quick trip to see Mama," she'd said, her eyes crinkling at the corners when she smiled. "I'll be back before you know it." He squeezed her hand, a silent promise to be waiting right here when she returned. The conductor called, "All aboard," and Sarah, with a final peck on Daniel's cheek, climbed the steps. She found a window seat and waved as the train prepared to depart. Daniel watched, his heart a familiar mix of longing and anticipation. He loved these small trips of hers. They allowed her to reconnect with her family, and he always looked forward to her return. The whistle blew, a sharp, piercing sound that echoed through the station. The train lurched forward, slowly gathering speed. Sarah's face grew smaller as the distance increased, her wave becoming a mere flutter of her hand. Daniel stood rooted to the spot, watching until the train became a dark smudge on the horizon, swallowed by the vastness of the west. He turned to leave, a quiet contentment settling over him. He'd go home, maybe start on that new woodworking project he'd been planning. Time would pass quickly, and soon enough, Sarah would be back, filling their home with her laughter and warmth. But the contentment was shattered. A scream ripped through the air, followed by a chorus of panicked shouts. Daniel's blood turned to ice. He pushed his way through the gathering crowd, his heart pounding against his ribs. Something was terribly wrong. He fought through the throng, his breath catching in his throat. What could have happened? An accident? A fight? The possibilities were endless, each one more terrifying than the last. He saw him then, old Mr. Abernathy, the station master, his face ashen, waving frantically. Abernathy pointed towards the edge of the platform near the tracks. Daniel's legs felt like lead as he stumbled forward, and then he saw her. Sarah. She lay still, her vibrant blue dress stained crimson. Her eyes, once so full of life, were now vacant, staring up at the uncaring sky. Her satchel, the one she always carried, was gone. A collective gasp went through the crowd, a wave of morbid curiosity washing over them. But Daniel heard nothing, saw nothing except Sarah. He knelt beside her, his hand trembling as he reached out to touch her face. It was cold, so cold. "Sarah," he whispered, his voice cracking. "Sarah, wake up." But she didn't wake up, she wouldn't wake up. A burly figure approached, Sheriff Brody, his face grim. "March," he said, his voice low. "I'm sorry, looks like a robbery gone bad, she must have resisted." Robbery, Sarah? Daniel couldn't comprehend it. Sarah wouldn't have fought, she would have given them anything they wanted. This wasn't just a robbery, this was something else, something darker. He looked at Sarah again, at the peaceful expression on her face, and a cold rage began to simmer within him. He wouldn't let this go. He would find out who did this. He would make them pay. He owed her that much. The next few days were a blur of grief and paperwork. The funeral was small, attended mostly by Sarah's close friends and family. The townsfolk offered their condolences, but Daniel could see the indifference in their eyes. It was just another tragedy in a town that had seen its fair share. Sheriff Brody, true to his word, did little to investigate. He questioned a few drifters, checked the local pawn shops for Sarah's satchel, but the investigation quickly stalled. "Robberies like this are hard to solve, March," he said, his voice lacking any real sympathy. "Chances are the killer is long gone." Daniel knew the sheriff was giving up. He could see it in the way he avoided his gaze, in the way he brushed off his questions. The law wouldn't help him, he was on his own. He spent his days wandering through their empty house, touching Sarah's things, trying to recapture the feeling of her presence. Her sewing basket sat untouched on the table, her favorite shawl draped over the back of the chair. Every object was a painful reminder of what he had lost. The nights were even worse. Sleep offered no escape, only nightmares filled with images of Sarah's lifeless eyes. He would wake up in a cold sweat, the echo of her scream ringing in his ears. He knew he couldn't go on like this. He had to do something. He had to find the person who had taken Sarah from him. Even if the law wouldn't help, he would find justice himself. He would become Sarah's avenger. And he would start by looking for anyone, anything that might lead him to the truth. Even a whisper of a rumor was better than the silence he was currently enduring. He started by asking around, talking to anyone who might have been at the station that morning. Most people offered the same vague platitudes, expressing their sympathy but offering no real information. It was as if Sarah's death was an inconvenience, a stain on their otherwise peaceful existence that they wanted to forget as quickly as possible. Days turned into weeks, and Daniel's hope began to dwindle. Just as he was about to succumb to despair, a flicker of possibility emerged from the most unlikely of sources. He found him slumped in an alley behind the saloon, a disheveled figure nursing a bottle of cheap whiskey. Foster. Everyone knew Foster, the town drunk, a man whose stories were as tall as they were unbelievable. He claimed to have seen everything from alien landings to buried treasure, and most people dismissed him as a harmless fool. But something about the way Foster looked that day caught Daniel's attention. His eyes were bloodshot and filled with a strange mixture of fear and guilt. Daniel knelt beside him, the stench of whiskey assaulting his nostrils. "Foster," he said, his voice low and steady, "I need to ask you something." Foster looked up, his eyes unfocused. "Leave me be," he mumbled. "I ain't done nothing." "I heard you were at the station the morning the morning she died," Daniel pressed, his voice tight. "Did you see anything, Foster, anything at all?" Foster's eyes widened and he began to tremble. I don't know nothing," he stammered, taking another swig of whiskey. "Just leave me alone." But Daniel wasn't going to let him go. He knew deep down that Foster knew something, and he was determined to find out what it was, no matter the cost. Daniel grabbed Foster by the arm, pulling him to his feet. Foster swayed precariously, his eyes darting around as if searching for an escape. "I'm not going to hurt you, Foster," Daniel said, his voice firm but controlled. "I just need you to tell me what you saw." He guided Foster out of the alley and towards the station. The morning sun beat down on them, casting long shadows that danced around their feet. Foster resisted at first, mumbling and protesting, but Daniel's grip was too strong. As they approached the platform, Foster's resistance intensified. He began to shake uncontrollably, his face turning pale. "I can't," he whimpered. "I can't go there." "You have to, Foster," Daniel insisted, his voice hardening. "Sarah deserves justice, and you're the only one who can help me get it." He led Foster to the exact spot where Sarah had been found. Foster stared at the ground, his eyes wide with terror. "I saw him," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "I saw him kill her." Daniel's heart leaped. He had him. He finally had a lead. "Tell me everything, Foster," he urged, his voice trembling with anticipation. "Everything you saw." Foster hesitated for a moment, then took a deep breath and began to speak. His words were disjointed and fragmented, like pieces of a broken mirror. But as he spoke, a picture began to emerge, a picture of a shadowy figure, a quick struggle, and a stolen satchel. The figure, according to Foster, was tall and thin, with a dark coat and a wide-brimmed hat that obscured his face. He had approached Sarah from behind, grabbed her satchel, and then... Foster choked on his words, unable to continue. Daniel waited patiently, his hand resting on Foster's shoulder. He knew this was difficult for him, but he had to push him. He had to get the whole story. "And then what, Foster?" he asked gently. "What happened then?" Foster shuddered, his face contorted in pain. He stabbed her," he finally gasped, his voice barely a whisper. "Just once, quick and clean, then he ran." Daniel's fist clenched, his knuckles white. The image of Sarah lying there, helpless and bleeding, seared itself into his mind. He fought to control his rage, knowing he needed Foster to stay focused. "Did you see where he went, Foster?" he asked, his voice strained. "Which way did he run?" Foster hesitated, his eyes darting around nervously. "Towards the rail yard," he mumbled. I think he disappeared into the rail yard." The rail yard, a sprawling maze of tracks, warehouses, and shadowy corners, a haven for criminals and drifters. It was a dangerous place, even in broad daylight. "Okay, Foster," Daniel said, his mind racing. "We're going to the rail yard. You're going to show me where he went." Foster's eyes widened in horror. "No, I can't go there. It's too dangerous." "I know it is," Daniel said, his voice hardening. "But Sarah's killer is out there, Foster, and we're going to find him. Now, are you with me or not?" Foster looked at Daniel, his eyes filled with a mixture of fear and desperation. He knew he had no choice. He was trapped. With a sigh of resignation, he nodded. "All right," he whispered. "I'll take you to the rail yard, but I'm not promising anything. I don't want any trouble." Daniel nodded grimly. Just show me the way, Foster, that's all I ask. And so the unlikely duo set off towards the rail yard, Daniel driven by grief and a thirst for vengeance, and Foster reluctantly leading the way, haunted by the memory of a murder he had witnessed. The hunt was on. The rail yard was a world unto itself, a grimy labyrinth of steel and shadows. Trains rumbled past, their whistles echoing through the air, and shadowy figures lurked in every corner. Foster led Daniel through the maze, his steps hesitant, his eyes constantly scanning their surroundings. He went this way, Foster mumbled, pointing towards a narrow alleyway between two warehouses. I saw him disappear down there. Daniel followed, his hand resting on the handle of the small pistol he had borrowed from a friend. He didn't know who or what they might find in the rail yard, but he was prepared for anything. The alleyway led to a hidden gambling den, a dimly lit room filled with the sounds of dice rolling and cards shuffling. Smoke hung heavy in the air, and the faces of the gamblers were etched with desperation and greed. Foster froze at the entrance, his eyes wide with fear. I can't go in there, he whispered. It's too dangerous. We have to, Foster, Daniel said, his voice firm. Maybe someone in there saw something. Maybe someone knows who killed Sarah. He pushed Foster through the doorway and into the gambling den. The room fell silent as all eyes turned towards them. Daniel felt a wave of hostility wash over him. They were outsiders, intruders in their world. He approached the barkeep, a burly man with a scarred face and a menacing glare. I'm looking for someone, Daniel said, his voice low and steady. Someone who was at the train station the other morning. The barkeep laughed, a harsh, guttural sound. You're looking in the wrong place, mister, he said. We don't know nothing about no train station. Daniel's eyes narrowed. He knew the barkeep was lying. He could see it in his eyes. Maybe you need a little persuasion, Daniel said, his hand tightening on the pistol in his pocket. The barkeep's eyes flickered, and he exchanged a quick glance with one of the gamblers. Daniel knew he was getting close. He was starting to unravel the secrets of the rail yard, and he wouldn't stop until he found Sarah's killer. Before Daniel could draw his weapon, the barkeep raised his hands in surrender. All right, he said, his voice laced with fear. I might have heard something, a whisper maybe. He leaned closer, his breath reeking of cheap whiskey. They say a stranger came through here a few days ago, looking for something or someone. He was asking about a woman who was headed west on the train. Daniel's heart pounded in his chest. This was it. This was the break he had been waiting for. Did he say what he wanted with her? He asked, his voice barely a whisper. The barkeep shook his head. Just that he needed to find her, said it was important. Where did he go? Daniel pressed. Where can I find him? The barkeep hesitated, then glanced towards a dark corner of the room. They say he headed out to Blackwood Canyon, he mumbled, to the outlaw camp. Blackwood Canyon, a notorious hideout for bandits and murderers, a place where the law didn't dare to tread. Daniel knew that going there was a death wish, but he didn't care. He was willing to risk everything to find Sarah's killer. He turned to Foster, who was huddled near the door, his face pale with fear. We're going to Blackwood Canyon, Daniel said, his voice grim. Foster's eyes widened in horror. No, I can't go there, that's suicide. I know it is, Daniel said, but we don't have a choice. This is our only lead. He grabbed Foster by the arm and dragged him out of the gambling den. As they stepped back into the sunlight, Daniel knew they were entering a new and even more dangerous world. The world of outlaws and killers, a world where justice was a rare commodity, and he was determined to bring Sarah's killer to justice no matter the cost, even if it meant risking his own life, and forcing a terrified, unwilling drunkard along for the ride. The journey to Blackwood Canyon was long and arduous, the landscape growing increasingly desolate with each passing mile. Foster, still trembling with fear, offered little conversation, his eyes constantly darting around, expecting an ambush at any moment. As they rode, Daniel's mind raced, piecing together the fragments of information he had gathered. The stranger at the gambling den, the barkeep's fear, the whispered rumors of Blackwood Canyon, it all pointed to something far more complex than a simple robbery. He thought back to Sarah, to her quiet demeanor and unwavering kindness. She wasn't someone who would attract the attention of common thieves. She was a simple woman, content with her life, devoted to her family. And then it hit him. The barkeep had said the stranger was looking for a woman headed west on the train. Not just any woman, but Sarah specifically. This wasn't a random act of violence. Sarah had been targeted, and if she was targeted, it wasn't for her money, it was for something else, something she was carrying. The satchel. Daniel's blood ran cold. The satchel wasn't just a bag, it was the key to everything. It held something that someone was willing to kill for. He looked at Foster, who was staring blankly ahead, lost in his own thoughts. He couldn't tell Foster what he was thinking. The less Foster knew, the better. This was bigger than he initially thought, and he needed to protect Foster as much as he could. He knew that Blackwood Canyon was going to be even more dangerous than he had imagined. He wasn't just hunting a killer anymore. He was stepping into a world of secrets and lies, and he had no idea what he was about to uncover. But he knew with chilling certainty that Sarah's death was about more than just a robbery. It was about what she carried. As they neared Blackwood Canyon, the air grew thick with tension. The canyon loomed before them, a jagged scar on the landscape, its shadows concealing unknown dangers. Daniel could feel Foster's fear radiating off him in waves. They approached the outlaw camp cautiously, their horses picking their way through the rocky terrain. The camp was a ramshackle collection of tents and makeshift shelters, surrounded by a motley crew of rough-looking men. Daniel dismounted, his hand never leaving the pistol at his side. He scanned the camp, his eyes searching for any sign of the stranger the barkeep had described. A gruff voice called out, "Well, well, what have we here? Looks like we got ourselves some visitors." A large, bearded man stepped forward, his eyes narrowed, his hand resting on the butt of a revolver. "You lost, mister." "I'm looking for someone," Daniel said, his voice steady. "A stranger who came through here a few days ago, asking about a woman who was headed west on the train." The outlaw's eyes narrowed further. "Never heard of him," he said, his voice flat. Daniel didn't believe him. He could see the lie in his eyes. "I think you're lying," he said, his voice hardening. The outlaw chuckled, a menacing sound. "Maybe I am, and maybe you should mind your own business and ride on out of here before you get hurt." "I'm not leaving without answers," Daniel said, his hand tightening on his pistol. "I know he's here, and I'm going to find him." Suddenly, a voice called out from the back of the camp. "Hold on, Jade. I think I know who he's talking about." A figure emerged from one of the tents, his face obscured by a wide-brimmed hat. Daniel's heart leaped. It was him. It was the stranger from the train station. And he knew with chilling certainty that he was about to uncover the truth about Sarah's murder, a truth that was far more dangerous and complex than he could have ever imagined. The simple robbery was gone, replaced by a conspiracy that reached far beyond this outlaw camp. The stranger stepped into the light, revealing a gaunt face with cold, calculating eyes. He was older than Daniel had expected, with streaks of gray in his dark hair. "So, you're the grieving husband," the stranger said, his voice smooth and menacing. "I'm afraid your wife was carrying something that didn't belong to her." "What was it?" Daniel demanded, his voice trembling with rage. "What was so important that you had to kill her for it?" The stranger smirked. "Let's just say it was information that could ruin some very powerful people." "What kind of information?" Daniel pressed, desperate to understand. The stranger sighed. "It doesn't matter now, she's dead and the information is safe." "Safe with you?" Daniel challenged. "For now," the stranger replied, "but I assure you it will be put to good use." Daniel had heard enough. He raised his pistol, his hand shaking with fury. "You murdered my wife," he snarled. "Now you're going to pay." Before Daniel could fire, the outlaw leader Jade stepped forward. "Hold it right there, mister," he said, his voice menacing. "This ain't your fight." "It is now," Daniel retorted, his eyes fixed on the stranger. "He killed my wife." "That may be," Jade said, "but he's under our protection. He paid us good money to keep him safe." Daniel realized he was outnumbered and outgunned, but he wasn't going to back down. He owed it to Sarah to see this through, no matter the cost. "Then I guess I'll have to go through you," Daniel said, his voice cold and determined. The stranger laughed, a chilling sound that echoed through the canyon. "You're a fool," he said. "You can't possibly win." "Maybe not," Daniel replied, "but I'm going to make you fight for it." And with that, he fired. The shot rang out through the canyon, shattering the tense silence. The battle for Sarah's justice had begun, and the secrets hidden in her satchel were about to be revealed. The truth about why Sarah was murdered was at hand. The canyon erupted in gunfire. Bullets whizzed through the air, kicking up dust and splintering wood. Daniel ducked behind a rock, returning fire as quickly as he could. Foster, miraculously, had managed to stay out of the line of fire, cowering behind a wagon. Daniel spared a glance, ensuring he was still alive, before refocusing on the battle at hand. He knew he couldn't win a straight-up fight against so many outlaws. He had to be smart. He had to use his wits. He spotted the stranger trying to make a run for it, disappearing into one of the tents. Daniel seized the opportunity. He charged forward, dodging bullets, and burst into the tent. The stranger was frantically searching for something, his eyes wide with panic. Daniel tackled him to the ground, wresting the pistol from his hand. "Where is it?" Daniel demanded, his voice a low growl. "Where's the information?" The stranger spat in his face. "You'll never find it," he hissed. Daniel didn't hesitate. He slammed the butt of the pistol against the stranger's head, knocking him unconscious. He quickly searched the tent, his heart pounding with anticipation. Finally, he found it, a small, leather-bound book hidden beneath a pile of blankets. He opened the book, his eyes scanning the pages. It was filled with names, dates, and figures. Names of powerful men, dates of secret meetings, and figures that revealed a vast conspiracy. Daniel knew that this information could bring down the entire town, but he also knew that exposing it would put him and everyone he cared about in grave danger. He looked at the unconscious stranger, at the outlaws still firing outside, and at the leather-bound book in his hands. He had a choice to make. He could seek revenge, killing everyone who had wronged him. Or he could try to bring the truth to light, even if it meant risking everything. The fate of the town and perhaps his own soul hung in the balance. He had to decide, vengeance or justice, and which path would truly honor Sarah's memory.